Consider. Consider the idea, just for a moment, that the reason that you come to this place, that the reason that you undertake anything at all that might be construed as worship or meditation, consider the possibility that it might be more about the future than the present. And consider the possibility that it might be more about the world than about you. I ask you to consider those things because, you see, that is what Fred and I had in mind when we chose the title for this morning's service, The Shape of Things to Come. Fred, who's on his way back from New York as we speak, he was preaching a memorial service. Fred was talking with me, and we were discussing how all too often nowadays it seems like everything is about being present now, accepting the moment now, being here now, and it's good to do those things. And it's also possible that there's more than just that. That the discipline of worship in liberal religion is not only about being present, but also about preparing for a future that we do not know, but that we will certainly contribute to and create by virtue of having participated in worship. I want to share with you the image of a crab walk. I talked with the folks in the early worship about this. You know the crab walk that you learned in gym class where you're like, you have your hands behind you, you're down on the floor, and your feet are in front of you, and you're walking like this. You're supporting yourself with your hands and your feet facing up to the ceiling. I'm not going to get out and do it for you, but I'm hoping that you're... Can I get some hands if you know what I'm talking about? So at least... Okay, good. If you're sitting next to somebody whose hand isn't up, turn to them and promise to show them the crab walk after service. So this whole metaphor will make sense, okay? A couple years ago, I regularly attended a class called boot camp at the YMCA. Now, I know I don't look like a real boot camp kind of guy. And it was a lot like gym class, which surprised me that I kept going because I hated gym. But there was something there that kept drawing me back. Whether it was the feeling of a good sweat or whether it was the way that I was seeing it changing my body or the peer pressure of other people doing it, for whatever reason, I kept going. In almost every single class, we had to do the crab walk. So here's this room full of about 30 or 40 adults racing back and forth across the gym floor like a bunch of grade schoolers doing that strange, silly crab walk. And the instructor shouting out, hips up, shoulders back, head back. You know, he wasn't just letting us meander. No, he was a drill sergeant about it. Was, after all, boot camp. And I did this for years, religiously. Like 3 days a week I would go to this class. Never stopping to think much about it other than just doing it. Until one day I was in New Orleans with our high school youth group. We were down there helping up with the cleanup effort after Hurricane Katrina. And our task that day was to move a pile of rubble that was about as long as one of these rows and about as wide as this third, and about halfway up to the balcony here. Our job was to move that pile of debris, which used to be the content of a house that had been flooded and destroyed, about 75 yards from the back of their yard to the roadside so that it could be picked up by the garbage folks. So all day long, we were doing nothing but hauling rubbish. Some of it seemingly senseless, pieces of wood that used to be part of the house, garbage, literal garbage, and some of it obviously pieces of people's lives, handled with tenderness and care, and yet nonetheless being thrown away. Until we got to this linoleum shower shell. It had been like a liner for a bathtub with a shower. and it was full of trash. And instead of emptying it all out piece at a time and then carrying the shell, a couple of the teenage guys and I said, "Hey, we can get this." So we picked up the whole thing, and well, the bottom had been sitting in water for a while, so it was a little soggy and started sagging. So we were moving pretty quickly, that 75 yards, hustling as quickly as we could, and I'm holding on to the edge, the lip of this liner, walking backwards, feeling those same muscles, and I realized this is why I did the crab walk. I never had it in mind at the time. And yet if I hadn't done that, I would not have been able to be present and be a part of that transforming experience then. That, I would suggest, is what worship does for us. Worship helps us sit through rituals and awkward times. It gives us words and songs and silences. It directs our minds, our hearts, and our spirits to things that we cannot know how we will engage later. But over a period of time, a regular discipline of worship shapes us to encounter the world in new ways, shapes us for prophetic speaking, shapes us for pastoral calm, shapes us to cry with those who mourn, to protest with those who see injustice. It shapes us to appreciate beauty, which then also shapes us to notice its absence. And that is what worship is about anyway, shaping of worth. It's the literal etymology of that word, the shaping of worth. So a couple of months ago, I sat with our middle schoolers, and they were asking me, what is it we worship here at Fountain Street? Do you ever get that question out in the larger community? Or maybe you're sitting with that question right now. What is it? Do we? Maybe you don't even use the word. That's fine. But our leaders who were engaging with our middle schoolers said, we really want to talk with them about worship, and we don't know how. What do we do? How do we talk about what we do here at Fountain Street? So I shared with them, too, that worship is about the shaping of worth and value. And then I gave them an order of service. And I said, look at the pieces in our Sunday worship service. Judging by the contents of our worship service, what do we value? And they sat with it for a while, and they said, well, music. I said, yeah, that makes sense to me. Words. Yes. We're a wordy church sometimes, too wordy sometimes. Beauty. Intelligence. Insight. When you leave this place, what has been shaped in you? Is your mind alive with new thoughts? Is your heart laden with pain and sadness for the world? Are you singing a tune that wasn't there before? Whether you worship here weekly or worship in other places, whether you have a daily meditation practice, following the moon by the lakeside, whatever it is that you do that helps you reach towards that full unity, what does that do for you? What does it shape in you? Now here's the next step, because as I said, it's not just about you, and it's not just about here and now. Because actually, this church doesn't belong to any of us, doesn't belong to the staff, it doesn't belong to the congregation, it belongs to its mission.